Imagine the hero of the story, right? Like the ultimate legendary lawman, and he's standing in this pitch-black alleyway.
Right, setting the scene.
Yeah, and he's staring down at the body of a man he just shot to death. And here's the kicker. It's not the villain. It is his best friend.
Oh, wow.
He shot him by mistake in the crossfire. Now, in a typical story, this is where the swelling, mournful orchestral music kicks in.
Right, the violins start playing.
Exactly. This is where the hero drops to his knees, maybe screams at the sky, or delivers this, heart-wrenching monologue about the ultimate cost of duty.
A big Hollywood moment.
But here, there is no music. There is zero speech. There is just the relentless, hollow howling of the prairie wind.
Just the wind.
Yeah. The hero buries his friend in the dark completely alone, and then mutilates his own weapon in this really quiet act of self-loathing. And the wild thing is, this isn't a scene from some modern, grimdark HBO prestige drama.
No, not at all.
This was broadcast directly into millions of American living rooms in the early 1950s.
It is, it's a genuinely shocking piece of media when you strip away the decades of pop culture assumptions we've, layered over it.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the tendency is to hear the word Western and immediately picture this very clean, binary chessboard, right?
White hats and black hats.
Exactly.
Yeah.
High noon strikes, the good guy is just a fraction of a second faster, the bad guy bites the dust, and the town is safe.
It's comforting.
Comforting, but completely disconnected from reality.
Yeah.
So welcome to the deep dive. The stack of sources you provided to us today is honestly nothing short of a revelation.
It really is an incredible collection.
You handed us this meticulously curated top 10 countdown of the greatest classic Gunsmoke radio broadcasts. And our mission today is to tackle this massive, really provocative question.
And it's a big one.
It is. Is this series just a dusty old relic of 1950s radio, some sanitized cowboy fairy tale? Or is it, as your sources passionately argue, America's Iliad and Odyssey?
Right.
Are we looking at one of the greatest dramatic achievements in American storytelling? Well, looking at the evidence you've compiled, the fairy tale argument disintegrates almost instantly.
Yeah, it doesn't hold up.
What we are actually examining here is the architecture of an epic.
Yeah.
Dodge City, in this audio landscape, it ceases to be just a historical dot on a Kansas map.
It becomes something else entirely.
Right, it functions as a mythic arena. It's this crucible where very ordinary, incredibly flawed people are forced to confront timeless moral questions.
Like questions about civilization, right?
Exactly. Civilization, justice, courage, mercy, and I think most importantly, the brutal, just soul-crushing personal cost of building a society out of the wilderness.
To really grasp the gravity of this, we have to put ourselves in the shoes of the audience who were sitting around their radios back then.
The historical context is so vital here.
It's doing so much heavy lifting. We are talking about post-World War II America, a nation that is just rapidly sliding into the paranoia and existential dread of the Cold War.
The psychological shift of that era, it really cannot be overstated. You have an audience comprised of millions of returning GIs and their families.
People who have seen the absolute worst of humanity.
Right. They've seen the horrors of a mechanized global conflict. They've seen Omaha Beach, the Pacific Theater. They're reading about the atomic bomb.
You can't just feed them a cartoon.
Exactly. You cannot feed that audience a story where a shiny tin badge magically repels bullets and, moral ambiguity. They wouldn't buy it for a second. They needed a hero who reflected their own exhaustion.
Which brings us to the creative team, right? Enter Norman Macdonald's visionary direction and John Meston's incredibly gritty, just uncompromising writing.
And at the absolute center of that storm is William Conrad.
Oh, man. His vocal performance as United States Marshal Matt Dillon is staggering. Just his voice alone.
That deep, resonant, almost weary bass voice.
Yes. It completely redefines the character. Matt Dillon isn't swaggering into town looking for a fight. He sounds like a man who is carrying the weight of the world.
He's profoundly reluctant, yet entirely bound by duty.
Right.
And Conrad created one of the greatest heroes in the history of the medium precisely because he didn't play him as a hero.
How so?
Well, he played him as a civil servant with a horrific job. And I think that brings us to the foundation of this epic narrative.
Let's get into the episodes.
Yeah, if we want to understand how Gunsmoke dismantled Hollywood mythology right out of the gate, we have to look at the 10th episode on your countdown, which is the roundup.
Oh, this one throws you right into the deep end of the moral swamp.
It really does.
The setup is just a powder keg. It's the end of the cattle season, and Dodge City is about to be overrun by 1,000 cowboys who have been on the trail for months.
Right, they're exhausted, they're armed.
They have pockets completely full of cash, and they want to drink and blow off steam. And the local businessmen, the merchants, the saloon owners, the gamblers, they are terrified.
But they also really want that money.
Exactly. So they come to Matt Dillon and demand that he hire 20 tough deputies to police the streets and keep the town pristine.
It's the classic demand of a society that wants the benefits of a rough economy without having to actually look at the mess.
Right.
But Matt's response is just a masterclass in pragmatic leadership, because he flatly refuses to hire the 20 men.
He doesn't just refuse, he basically tells them they are idiots.
Yeah, he does.
He knows that throwing 20 heavily armed, jumpy deputies into his swirling mob of 1,000 drunk, wild cowboys isn't going to maintain order.
It's going to start a war.
It's going to spark a full-blown range war right in the middle of Front Street. He predicts it will cause the worst slaughter the town has ever seen.
And this is where the realism of Gunsmoke completely separates it from earlier Westerns. Matt understands mob psychology.
Right.
He knows that a badge is not some magic talisman that instantly commands respect. In the wrong hands at the wrong time, it's actually a provocation.
It makes things worse.
It's exactly. The town wants this massive show of force. Yeah. But Matt knows that true authority often requires, well, restraint.
So his solution is wild. He hires exactly one man, a guy named Zell.
And Zell is a fascinating character.
He really is. He's an old friend who owes Matt his life, this former sheriff of Tascosa. But Zell is not a Boy Scout by any stretch.
Not at all.
He is this cynical, boastful, hard-bitten guy who freely admits to being a killer. He just happens to kill on the side of the law.
Right, a convenient killer.
So Matt and Zell go out to face the mob, and the inevitable violence breaks out. They get pinned down in a dark alley by drifters taking shots at them. Matt is firing blindly into the shadows. He sees a figure moving toward him with a gun in each hand.
And Matt doesn't hesitate.
No, he fires. He drops the man.
And as you mentioned at the very beginning of our dive, that man is Zell, the one guy Matt brought in to help him.
This is the exact moment that completely hooked me.
Yeah.
Because I'm waiting for the standard Hollywood reaction.
Right, you expect him to run over.
Yeah, I'm waiting for Matt to rush over, cradle Zell's head, and listen to some dying words of forgiveness or something.
That doesn't happen.
Instead, Matt just walks the empty streets all night. He buries his friend in a grove of cottonwoods by himself. And then he takes his 6-shooter, pulls out his knife, and carves a single deep notch into the handle of his gun.
And that physical act is steeped in just profound symbolism. Because of the pulp westerns, a notch on a gun is a scoreboard.
Right, a brag.
Yeah, it's a trophy for a gunslinger to brag about how many men he's killed.
Wait, hold on, though. I have to push back on this a little bit.
Sure.
Because earlier in this exact episode, Matt tells his deputy, Chester, that he has absolute scorn for the kind of men who notch their guns to keep their courage up.
He does say that.
So if he hates it, why on earth does he do it? Like, does this mean Matt is secretly just as bloodthirsty or broken as the killers he locks up? Is he setting this incredibly dark, anti-heroic tone on purpose?
It's not bloodlust. It's actually the exact opposite. And I think that's why it elevates the story to the level of classical tragedy.
Okay, how so?
You have to look at the motivation. The text notes he carves it partly out of scorn for those trophy hunters, but mostly, and I'm quoting the script here, as kind of a cross that I bear for no one.
A cross he bears. Man.
Yes. Think about the heroes of Greek tragedy, like Agamemnon or Oedipus. They are crushed by the unintended consequences of their own leadership.
Because Matt made the call.
Exactly. Matt made the tactical decision. He brought Zell into the fight. He pulled the trigger. The notch is a permanent physical defacement of the tool of his trade.
So he feels it every time.
Every single time he grips that gun, his palm will feel the scar of his own fallibility. He is forcing himself to never, ever forget the deadly cost of his mistakes. It is deeply heroic, but in a really painful, agonizing way.
Wow, that reframes the entire character for me. It's not a trophy, it's a penance. And you feel that heavy, almost suffocating social weight that Matt carries bleeding right into the next story on your countdown. Episode number 9, Marshal Dillon finally asks Miss Kitty to the dance.
Which is such a shift in tone. ostensibly.
Right. We move from the physical violence of a gunfight into something that is, honestly, just as brutal, which is the social violence of a town establishing its hierarchy.
This episode is a brilliant piece of emotional storytelling.
Yeah.
And it really highlights how the writers respected the adult intelligence of their audience.
Because you hear the title, and it sounds like a lighthearted sitcom premise,
It's
right?
like a rom-com.
Exactly. But it is gut-wrenching. Matt and Kitty have this deeply complex, very restrained relationship. She is a hostess at the Texas Trail Saloon. Matt is the town marshal.
And he finally asks her out properly.
He does. He asks her to go with him to a respectable upper-crust town dance, which is a benefit to raise money for the new school.
He wants to treat her right.
Yeah, he even buys her this beautiful, expensive black velvet cloak. But Kitty is terrified. She knows exactly how the polite society women of Dodge view a saloon girl. And she tries to warn Matt.
But Matt is stubborn.
Very. He insists she looks beautiful and that they have every right to be there.
He is basically attempting to force his own moral compass onto a society that has rigid, really hypocritical boundaries.
And the collision is inevitable.
And painful.
It is agonizing to listen to. They walk into this dance and the temperature just drops. The respectable folks, led by this venomous woman named Miss Sprinkle, completely shun them.
Just turns their backs.
People physically turn away. The dance floor literally empties out around them. And then Miss Sprinkle goes in for the kill, loudly insulting Kitty in public, calling her common and indecent.
It's awful.
If you've ever experienced the sudden freezing exclusion of a clique or watched a community turn its back on someone to protect their own perceived superiority, this scene hits entirely too close to home.
And the hypocrisy is the point here. Miss Sprinkle and the respectable townspeople rely on Matt Dillon to take bullets for them,
Right.
to bleed in the dirt so they can have their nice school benefit dances. But they absolutely refuse to allow him or the woman he cares for to participate in the society he is actively bleeding to protect.
Miss Sprinkle's husband awkwardly tries to intervene, and you can hear the barely contained rage in Matt's voice. He practically dares the man to draw a gun.
The tension is incredible.
Then 3 drifters step onto the empty dance floor and basically tell Matt to take his woman and leave. And Matt completely digs his heels in.
He's ready for a war.
He tells Kitty they are staying. He is fully prepared to fight every single man in that room, to burn the whole social structure to the ground, just to protect Kitty's dignity.
Which is incredibly romantic in a very violent sort of way.
Very violent.
But Kitty is the pragmatist here. She is the one who sees the bigger picture.
Right. She realizes that Matt's pride is going to get people killed over a dance. She knows he can't shoot the town into respecting her. So she forces him to leave. She protects him from himself.
That's a great way to put it.
And when they finally retreat back to the empty saloon, the dam breaks. Kitty cries. But the dialogue here is astonishing. She tells Matt explicitly that she isn't crying because she was insulted.
Right.
She says, I wanted to cry right there in the hall, watching you and knowing there was nothing you could do.
That line is the thesis of their entire dynamic. The writers understood that silence and subtext do the heavy lifting in truly great drama.
Yeah.
Kitty is weeping for Matt's agonizing isolation. I mean, he is the alpha predator of Dodge City when it comes to a gunfight. But against the whispers and the sneers of polite society, he is utterly powerless.
Listening to this, it doesn't feel like a dusty radio show from 1952. The way they interact, it's pure prestige television.
Absolutely.
It's exactly the dynamic between Al Swearingen and Trixie in Deadwood, or Rip and Beth in Yellowstone.
Yes, that unspoken bond.
There are no soapy monologues. No one is screaming in the rain. The entire relationship is built on this unspoken, shared understanding of just how harsh and unforgiving the world is.
And how it ends is so beautiful.
At the end of the episode, Matt quietly asks the bartender to break out a bottle of champagne. The two of them dance alone with no music in an empty saloon. It is an act of quiet, heartbreaking defiance against the town that rejected them.
They are establishing a private moral code that exists entirely outside of Dodge City's superficial laws.
Right.
And as we transition out of the town limits and onto the open plains, that theme of superficial morality versus harsh reality really takes center stage. Which brings us to episode number 8, Buffalo Hunters.
Oh man, if we want to talk about how Gunsmoke tackled the dark, ugly side of Manifest Destiny, this is the episode.
It's a heavy one.
The setup feels like a standard frontier mystery. 2 brothers, the Biggs boys, are found murdered on the prairie. Their wagons have been burned to the ground. Matt and his deputy, Chester, go out to investigate, and they find a painted Arapaho war rattle in the ashes, along with traces of Indian face paint. The town instantly panics. Everyone is screaming about an Indian uprising.
Because it's the most convenient narrative for the white settlers. It confirms all their pre-existing prejudices, but Matt doesn't buy the narrative.
Matt looks at the crime scene with the eyes of a detective, not a reactionary. The sources point out that Matt notices two crucial details. The victims' rifles and their horses were left behind.
Which is a massive red flag.
Matt knows the plains. He knows that a Native American raiding party would never leave behind highly valuable rifles and perfectly good horses. It makes no tactical sense.
Right.
He realizes instantly that the scene was staged. It was a crime committed by white men dressed up to look like a Native American attack.
And the motive, as it so often is in the expansion of the West, is pure, unadulterated greed.
Exactly. The Biggs boys had managed to kill an albino buffalo. And an incredibly rare white buffalo hide is worth a fortune.
A literal fortune.
The killers wanted the hide, and they didn't care who they had to murder to get it. Matt eventually tracks down the culprits. Two completely ruthless hunters named Tennessee and Kel. And these guys are terrifying precisely because they are so casually vicious.
And what is particularly striking for a piece of media produced in the 1950s is how impartially, yet damningly, the episode handles Native American relations and environmental destruction.
I mean, Tennessee is married to a Native American woman, and he savagely beats her just to ensure she won't tell Matt the truth.
It's brutal.
And it goes further than that. Tennessee is perfectly, calmly willing to let the United States cavalry ride out and massacre a completely peaceful encampment of Arapaho men, women, and children, just so he can successfully cover up his theft of a buffalo hide.
The show is actively subverting the foundational myths of the era here.
Oh, completely.
For decades, Hollywood had trained audiences to view the indigenous people as the savage threat to civilization and the white frontiersman as the noble bringer of order. Gunsmoke inverts this entirely.
Tennessee and Kel are the monsters.
The white men, Tennessee and Kel, are the true chaotic savages. They are slaughtering the buffalo by the hundreds, leaving the meat to rot in the sun just to strip the hides, destroying the ecosystem the indigenous people rely on.
Yeah.
And they're willing to spark a bloody genocidal war purely for profit.
It forces you, as the listener, to confront the actual cost of westward expansion. There is nothing noble about Tennessee. He is a parasite.
A total parasite.
And that staggering brutality, the cheapness of human life on the frontier, doesn't let up. It bleeds right into the 7th episode on the countdown, the rideback.
If Buffalo Hunters is about the macro-level destruction of the frontier, the rideback is a micro-level exploration of the psychology of a killer.
It really is.
It is one of the most tense, claustrophobic episodes in the entire archive.
Claustrophobic is the perfect word, even though they are out in the wide open spaces.
Right.
Matt has apprehended a drifter named Leeds Martin, and he is transporting him back to Dodge City to face the hangman.
And he's not a good guy.
The text explicitly notes that Martin is not some misunderstood anti-hero. He murdered 2 young kids. He's a bad man.
Yeah.
But the journey back turns into a nightmare. They realize they are being stalked by a war party of Cheyenne warriors.
This creates a brilliant pressure cooker. You have a lawman and a murderer handcuffed together, surrounded by a hostile force that wants to kill them both.
And Martin, being a complete psychopath, weaponizes the terror. He uses the impending attack to psychologically torture Matt.
He's just picking at him.
He constantly begs Matt to uncuff him and give him a gun. He taunts Matt's morality, basically saying, your precious law doesn't mean anything out here in the dirt. Unchain me or we both die.
He's trying to break Matt.
He is trying to force him to abandon his duty for the sake of base animal survival.
Martin is the embodiment of nihilism.
Mm-hmm.
He believes civilization is a joke, and the environment seems to agree with him.
It really does, because they desperately seek shelter in an isolated cabin, and what do they find inside? A massacre.
That's so dark.
A pioneer family, a man, a woman, and a little girl, have been slaughtered by the Cheyenne. It is a horrific, visceral scene. And what is Martin's reaction?
He laughs.
He essentially laughs. He looks at this butchered family and tells Matt that the Indians have the right idea. He mocks the very concept of building a life, arguing that human life is cheap, meaningless, and destined for violence.
He is pushing Matt to the absolute edge of his sanity.
But the climax is what elevates this from a simple suspense story into an absolute masterpiece of the genre.
Oh, the climax is incredible.
The Cheyenne finally corner them in a box canyon. They are completely pinned down by rifle fire. Matt tells Martin he has to leave him tied up behind a boulder while he scrambles up the ridge to get a better vantage point.
Right.
But as Matt is moving, suddenly Martin snaps. He jumps up, his hands still bound, grabs two massive melon-sized rocks, and charges directly at the Cheyenne warriors, screaming at the top of his lungs.
He literally brings rocks to a gunfight.
Yes, and he is absolutely ferocious. He manages to bludgeon two of the warriors to death before the rest of the war party shoots him in the head.
Wow.
The Cheyenne scatter, and Matt survives. But when Matt climbs down and examines Martin's body, he searches his pockets, and he finds a photograph of a little girl.
It is a devastating reveal.
I really struggled with how to interpret this. I kept thinking, is this where Gunsmoke shifts into Cormac McCarthy territory?
The ambiguity is very McCarthy.
Because it's so dense. Why did Martin charge? Did seeing the murdered little girl in the cabin trigger a memory of his own daughter? Did it break through his psychotic shell? Did he sacrifice himself to save Matt? Or was it just an explosion of pure, uncontrollable, nihilistic violence?
The brilliance of the writing is that it refuses to give you a definitive answer.
It just leaves you hanging.
It's likely a chaotic mixture of all those things. If you look at how this mirrors later cinematic masterpieces, films like John Ford's The Searchers or Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven, they all grapple with this incredibly thin, blurry line between the civilized man and the savage wilderness.
Right.
Finding the picture of the little girl doesn't magically redeem Leeds Martin. It doesn't erase the fact that he murdered children. But what it does do is restore a fractured, complicated sense of humanity to a monster.
It denies you the easy out.
Exactly. It denies Matt and the listener the comfort of writing Martin off as just a one-dimensional demon. As Matt quietly says over the body, there's just no accounting for some men's ways.
It leaves you with this profound, lingering tragedy. But let me ask you this. If every single episode of the show was this heavy, this philosophically bleak, wouldn't it just be exhausting?
Oh, completely.
I mean, a truly great epic can't just be constant death and misery, right?
Absolutely not. An epic, whether it's Homer or a long-running radio drama, requires breathing room. If you only ever show the hero fighting, you forget what society he is actually fighting to protect.
You lose the stakes.
You need to see the community. You need to see the humanity in the dust.
Which brings us perfectly to the next phase of the countdown, episodes 6, 5, and 4.
The town episodes.
Yeah, these focus heavily on how the show maintained its weight by elevating the profound moments hidden in very ordinary days. Let's look at episode 6, Cavalcade. Your sources note this is widely considered one of the warmest, most beloved episodes by hardcore fans.
It's a gorgeous piece of slice-of-life, ensemble storytelling. It shifts the focus away from Matt's gun and onto the complicated history of his closest ally, Doc Adams.
The setup is incredibly tense, but in a totally different way. A slick, well-dressed deputy named Ed Hunter arrives in Dodge on the train all the way from Richmond, Virginia.
He is out of his element.
He is carrying an extradition warrant for a murderer named Calvin Moore. And through a very tense, quiet conversation, the bombshell drops for the audience. The grumpy, beloved, life-saving Doc Adams is Calvin Moore.
The backstory Doc reveals to Matt is crucial to understanding the theme of the frontier.
Right, the duel.
17 years ago, back in polite Southern society, Doc was challenged to a duel over a woman by a hot-headed, wealthy gentleman. Doc shot him in pure self-defense.
But it doesn't matter.
Right, because Doc was a Yankee, an outsider, and there were no friendly witnesses. He knew the local courts would hang him for murder regardless of the truth.
So he ran.
He changed his name, fled to the edge of civilization, and spent the next 2 decades patching up gunshot wounds and delivering babies in Dodge City.
It puts Matt in an agonizing position. Matt is a sworn United States Marshal. The legal paperwork in Deputy Hunter's pocket is completely valid.
The law says Doc is a fleeing murderer.
Does Matt arrest his best friend? Does he send the town's only doctor back east to hang for a duel that happened nearly 2 decades ago? Deputy Hunter is snooping around town, asking questions, getting dangerously close to putting the pieces together.
You can feel the noose tightening.
But then the universe intervenes with a completely unrelated tragedy.
A terrible accident.
Right. A nameless, impoverished drifter, everyone just calls him Texas Joe, gets caught between 2 train cars in the rail yard and is horribly crushed.
It's awful.
They bring him to Doc's makeshift clinic, but there's nothing Doc can do. The man dies on the table. Deputy Hunter is hovering right there in the clinic, highly suspicious of Doc.
And then Matt makes his move.
Matt looks down at the dead, mangled drifter, and he quietly turns to the Virginia deputy and says, "Didn't you notice the resemblance, Marshal? That Texas Joe there, He's obviously the man in the photograph you showed me.
It is a breathtaking moment of subtext. Matt and Doc, without explicitly stating it, collectively decide to let the deputy believe the dead drifter is the fugitive Calvin Moore.
It's a lie. The chief law enforcement officer of the territory tells a bald-faced lie to subvert the legal system.
He does, and the episode argues forcefully that he is morally right to do so.
Which is wild for the time.
It goes to the heart of what the frontier represents in American mythology. It is a place of reinvention. The episode makes a profound distinction between technical, bureaucratic law and actual moral justice.
Because of who Doc has become.
Doc Adams has saved hundreds of lives in Dodge City. He is a pillar of the community. Tearing him away to swing from a rope for a 17-year-old duel isn't justice. It's just the mechanical execution of a piece of paper.
Right.
The frontier, the vastness of the West, allows men to outrun their pasts, but only if their present actions justify their freedom. Matt weighs Doc's soul against the law, and he chooses Doc's soul.
It's this quiet, beautiful victory for the community over the bureaucracy. But the overarching tragedy of the Western genre is that the frontier doesn't last.
No, it never does.
The bureaucracy always wins eventually. And that brings us to episode 5, Jalisco. The community is changing, and this episode is an explosive look at aging, obsolescence, and fading reputations.
The anxiety of obsolescence is the phantom menace of every great Western.
Totally.
The hero who is wild enough to tame the wilderness inevitably finds that the civilized, paved world he helped create no longer has a place for him.
We see that tragic arc embodied perfectly in a character named Ben Rohr. He is a wealthy, hardened cattleman.
He's the old guard.
Rohr represents the old, lawless open range. He built his empire with blood and bullets. But now, homesteaders are arriving, farmers. They are putting up barbed wire fences, cutting off the grazing routes, claiming the land piece by piece.
And Rohr is furious.
He views the land as his right because he fought the elements and the indigenous tribes to take it. So his men try to intimidate the farmers. They brutally murder a homesteader family, the Thompsons.
And then it gets worse.
To cover their tracks, Rohr's men lynch an innocent Native American man and blame him for the murders.
Rohr's moral compass is entirely dictated by power. He feels entitled to violence because he was there first. But Matt is the instrument of the changing times.
Matt knows you can't fight progress.
Matt understands that progress is a steamroller. You can't shoot a barbed wire fence to death.
The confrontation that this builds to is legendary. Matt has figured out the truth, and he arrests one of Rohr's men for the murders.
Which sets Rohr off.
Rohr is not going to stand for this. He rides into Dodge City with 100 heavily armed, seasoned cattlemen to break his man out of jail. But waiting on the other side of Front Street are 30 armed homesteaders, terrified but ready to defend the law.
It's a powder keg that's going to leave half the town dead.
And what does Matt do? Does he recruit an army? No. He steps right out into the middle of the street, completely alone, entirely outgunned.
It's such a striking visual.
He walks right up to the leaders, gets the drop on both Rohr and the head of the homesteaders, and essentially holds the generals hostage to force the two armies to stand down.
And the dialogue here is like a razor blade.
Yeah.
Matt stares Rohr down and says, "Times change, Ben. Farms and families. Next thing they'll do is set up courts and bring the law in here."
And Rohr spits back at him that he won't be pushed around by courts.
And Matt just calmly replies, "Law's here now, Ben. In Dodge City, I'm the law."
It is a defining moment for the character. The script aggressively refuses to romanticize the Old West here.
Right. It doesn't paint Rohr as a misunderstood hero.
It paints him as a dinosaur raging at a meteor. The episode vividly illustrates the painful, necessary, and frequently violent transition required to establish civilized courts and boundaries. Ben Rohr is the tragic embodiment of an era whose time has simply violently run out.
And while the death of an era is loud and violent, sometimes the tragedy of the frontier is incredibly quiet and personal.
That brings us to episode 4, The Guitar.
This one is special.
If we are talking about finding beauty amidst sheer brutality, this episode is the absolute pinnacle of the series.
It is a remarkable piece of storytelling. It operates almost entirely on atmosphere and pathos.
The setup is just heartbreaking. We are introduced to Weed Pendle. He's an ex-Union soldier, but the script makes it very clear that Weed suffered some sort of severe trauma or brain injury.
He's simple-minded.
He has the intellect and the innocence of a child. He wanders the harsh frontier with literally 2 possessions in the world that bring him joy: a scrawny, worn-out mule, and a guitar.
And despite his limitations, Weed plays this guitar beautifully.
He creates this gorgeous, delicate music in a world of dust and violence.
He isn't innocent. He is entirely out of place in the cynical, hard-edged reality of Dodge City. And innocence in the West is a magnet for cruelty.
It is. The absolute worst elements of Dodge zero in on him. Two utterly vicious, mean-spirited men named Tyler and Short decide to torment Weed simply because he was a Yankee and because he is an easy target.
They mock him, push him around.
And then they cross a line into staggering, senseless cruelty. In the dead of night, they catch Weed's mule and cut off one of its ears. And they take Weed's beautiful guitar, the only thing that gives him a voice, and they smash it to splinters.
It's not a robbery. It's an act of spiritual vandalism.
Exactly. Weed doesn't yell, he doesn't scream or throw a punch. He just gathers the pieces of his guitar. But that night, Weed sneaks into the hotel room where Tyler and Short are sleeping. And with absolute terrifying quietness, Weed cuts their throats.
He murders both of them in their beds.
Yeah.
Under the strict letter of the law, Weed Pendle is now a murderer. Matt Dillon's sworn duty is to arrest him, put him on trial, and watch him hang.
But this is where the episode elevates into pure poetic tragedy. Matt goes to the saloon the next morning to investigate the murders. And the town of Dodge City, a town full of gamblers, drunks, and cynical merchants who normally wouldn't lift a finger to help a stranger.
The whole town closes ranks.
Every single person in the saloon, led by Sam the bartender, looks Matt right in the eye and provides an ironclad, meticulously coordinated alibi for Weed Pendle.
They all swear Weed was sitting in the corner of the saloon all night long.
It is a breathtaking moment of communal grace. The entire town recognizes the profound, almost cosmic injustice that was done to this innocent man.
As you said, smashing the guitar wasn't just property damage. They recognized it as the destruction of beauty in a desolate place.
Right.
They know Weed killed those men, but they collectively decide that the universe demanded it.
The collective lie to protect him from the hangman's noose is incredibly moving. When Matt finally walks outside, he watches Weed riding out of town on his mutilated, one-eared mule. Weed's hands are empty without his guitar. He just looks lost.
And Matt knows.
Matt is the greatest detective in the territory. He knows exactly what happened. He knows the town is lying. But he watches Weed ride over the horizon and he lets him go.
It is a haunting reminder that sometimes the law is just too blunt and clumsy an instrument to measure true right and wrong.
It's deeply moving. And it serves as a fascinating contrast to what comes next.
The top three.
We've spent these episodes watching Matt act as the arbiter, the protector, the man who absorbs the pain of the community. But as we move into the final, highest tier of your countdown, the top 3 episodes, the narrative machinery turns entirely on Matt Dillon himself.
The hero is stripped of his advantages and forced into total vulnerability.
Let's start with episode 3, The Cabin. Because reading through this script, it doesn't feel like a Western. It reads like a psychological horror movie.
It is a masterclass in suspense, isolation, and the manipulation of the audio medium.
Matt is out on the trail riding back to Dodge when he gets caught in a freak, blinding blizzard. The temperature plummets, the wind is howling, and his horse is freezing. He's gonna die if he doesn't find shelter.
It's life or death before he even meets the villains.
He manages to stumble upon an isolated, snowed-in ranch house, but he walks right out of the frying pan and into the fire. The house has been taken over by 2 men who are on the run for a string of incredibly bloody bank robberies.
You have Hack and Alvy.
Hack is this giant, burly, bearded brute holding a shotgun, and then you have his partner, Alvy, and Alvy is pure nightmare fuel.
The character description of Alvy is chilling.
The script describes him as this underfed youth who is completely bald, his skin pulled tight across his skull, and he is deeply, deeply unhinged.
He giggles at inappropriate times.
He's practically vibrating with psychotic energy, and they are holding a young woman named Belle hostage in the cabin. Matt, half frozen, walks right into their trap. They disarm him immediately.
The entire narrative from that point on is confined to this one freezing room while the storm rages outside.
And the sound design. Oh my God, the sound design you hear about in the notes. The relentless howling of the winter wind is a constant presence. It's like a 4th character in the room.
It creates this inescapable, epic landscape, trapping these characters in a pressure cooker.
Hack decides he isn't going to just shoot Matt because a bullet wound would prove he was murdered if the cavalry finds the body.
Right, he has a worse plan.
Hack's plan is to wait until Matt warms up a bit, knock him unconscious, and then throw him out into the blizzard to freeze to death so it looks like he just got lost in the storm.
It strips away all the romanticism we associate with the Western hero. Matt is not going to win this with a lightning-fast quick draw at high noon. He is reduced to raw, primitive survival.
The claustrophobia is palpable. Alvy is standing there with a heavy iron fire poker, just waiting for the nod from Hack to bash Matt's brains in.
The tension builds and builds.
Belle, the captive girl, is sent out to the freezing barn to get wood. But instead of coming back submissively, she suddenly throws the heavy front door wide open.
The wind rushes in.
The lantern blows out, plunging the room into total darkness and chaos. Belle shoves a heavy iron pitchfork into Matt's hands in the dark.
And the mythic lawman is reduced to desperate, brutal hand-to-hand combat in the pitch black with agricultural tools.
Exactly. Matt ends up impaling the giant Hack with the pitchfork in the dark. It is visceral, it is messy, and it is terrifying. He survives, but barely.
And that idea, stripping the hero of his armor and his authority, is taken to the absolute extreme in Episode 2, Matt for Murder.
This is a brilliant narrative structure. It explores what happens when the very foundation of public trust in the hero is actively weaponized against him.
The fall from grace happens so fast it gives you whiplash.
There is a corrupt, wealthy cattle buyer named Red Samples in Dodge. He despises Matt Dillon because Matt's strict enforcement of the law is cutting into his illegal profits.
So Samples executes a diabolical plan.
He murders his own business partner, Lou Price, in cold blood. And then he pays a sleazy drifter named Jim Huggin to swear on a Bible that he saw Marshal Matt Dillon pull the trigger.
Because Huggin testifies to it officially, the bureaucracy takes over.
Right. Word reaches Washington. The War Department immediately sends a telegram suspending Matt. They demand his badge. Matt is officially stripped of his authority.
He is no longer the law.
He is an accused murderer facing the hangman's noose. And the town of Dodge City instantly fractures. Half the people Matt has protected for years, turn their backs on him and believe he is a killer.
And Red Samples immediately starts gloating, bragging about opening up crooked gambling tables now that the hard-nosed lawman is out of the way.
It's the ultimate test of the hero. Take away the badge, take away the institutional power, and what is left? Who is the man beneath the tin star?
It reminds me so much of the Odyssey. It really does.
Oh, totally.
It's exactly like Odysseus returning to the island of Ithaca after the Trojan War. He comes back to his own home, disguised as an impoverished beggar. He can't rely on his title as king. He has to rely entirely on his wits, his reputation, and his inherent character to defeat the suitors who have taken over his house.
That is a very apt parallel. And Matt receives help from a legendary figure.
Yes, a troop of cavalry arrives in town, and riding with them is none other than the legendary gunfighter Wild Bill Hickok.
Now, initially, the town thinks Hickok is there to arrest or kill Matt. But Hickok rides up to Matt, shakes his hand, and says he came to help. He believes Matt is innocent.
The way they solve the problem is, legally speaking, highly dubious.
Oh, it's a complete violation of civil rights. Matt and Hickok figure out where Red Samples is hiding the false witness, Huggin. They break into the livery stable, kidnap Huggin at gunpoint, drag him over to Doc Adams' office, and essentially force-feed the man 3 quarts of raw whiskey until he is blackout drunk and terrified.
In his drunken stupor, Huggin confesses to the entire frame-up.
It shows that Matt's morality is results-oriented. He will break procedural rules if it means uncovering the objective truth.
But the climax is what makes it so satisfying. Armed with the truth, but still completely lacking a badge or official authority, Matt marches straight into the crowded saloon to arrest Red Samples.
Relying purely on his presence.
He relies purely on the immense moral weight of his character and the fact that Wild Bill Hickok is standing shoulder to shoulder with him, hands hovering over his guns.
It is thrilling. Matt's reputation, his inherent, unshakable sense of justice, is what saves his life, not the piece of tin on his chest.
But carrying that inherent sense of justice, being the man who has to stare into the abyss every single day, comes at an agonizing, cumulative price. Which brings us to the zenith of the countdown. Episode number 1, Bloody Hands.
This is it. This is widely considered the greatest episode of Gunsmoke ever broadcast. And it doesn't start with a slow build, it starts with a massacre.
A brutal ambush.
Matt tracks down a gang of 4 vicious, heavily armed outlaws led by a man named Jack Bran. But Matt doesn't walk into the street and call them out for a fair fight. The transcript reveals he hides in the tall grass outside their cabin.
He waits for them to walk out.
He yells to spook them and then unleashes a double-barreled shotgun, physically tearing 2 of the men apart. Then he draws his 6-shooter and kills a 3rd man before the body of the first even hits the ground.
It's terrifying.
Jack Bran, the ruthless leader, simply throws his hands up and surrenders, utterly terrified. He tells Matt he's not fighting a man. He says Matt was killing hogs, not men.
It is a horrifying, grotesque image of violence. There is nothing gallant about it. Matt brings a wagon load of bleeding corpses back to Dodge City.
And when Doc Adams and Chester see the sheer carnage in the back of that wagon, even they are taken aback. Doc tries to warn Matt about the psychological toll this is taking on him.
Doc says, wait till tomorrow or the next day. There'll be somebody else. There's always another man to kill.
And that single observation is the straw that breaks the camel's back.
It breaks Matt Dillon.
The burden of the killing, the sheer, endless, inescapable repetition of the violence just crushes his spirit. The man who stood down armies and survived blizzards finally crumbles under the weight of his own actions.
He takes off his gun belt.
He drops it on the desk. He simply quits. He tells Chester he's done, and he goes fishing. And he absolutely refuses to put the badge back on. Even when they come to him later and tell him a new killer has arrived in town looking for him, he is paralyzed.
What we're listening to here is a profound, incredibly ahead of its time study of moral injury.
Let's camp out on that term for a minute, because moral injury feels like the key to unlocking the entire series. It's not just PTSD, right? It's different.
It is deeply different. PTSD is often rooted in trauma, fear, and a threat to one's own life. Moral injury occurs when a person is forced to act in ways that profoundly transgress their own deeply held moral beliefs.
Matt believes in order.
Right. He believes in justice and the fundamental sanctity of human life. Yet his job, his duty to society, requires him to constantly, brutally take human life.
Every time he pulls the trigger.
Every time, even if it is to save a family or stop a bank robber, a small piece of his own soul dies. The sheer loneliness of leadership is on full display here. He is completely isolated by the violence he must commit to keep the polite society of Dodge City safe.
And it leads to arguably the most famous line in the history of the series, and honestly, one of the great lines in 20th century American drama.
When Chester begs him to understand.
Yeah, Chester begs him to understand that the men he killed deserved it, that it was the right thing to do. Matt looks at him and says, a man can get to hate killing, Marshall, even when it's right.
Even when it's right. That caveat is what has made the line unforgettable for over 70 years. It encapsulates the ultimate tragedy of the frontier hero.
It really does.
The violence is absolutely necessary for civilization to take root, but the man who executes that violence is poisoned by it. He cannot be a part of the peaceful society he is building because his hands are covered in blood.
It's devastating.
It truly is. This episode cements Matt Dillon's place not just as a pop culture icon, but alongside America's great literary heroes.
Like who?
He belongs in the pantheon with the complex, brooding, tragic figures you find in the works of Owen Wister's The Virginian, or the dark landscapes of Zane Grey and Louis L'Amour. He's a man who is actively destroying his own soul so that the community around him can flourish.
Wow. Okay, looking at the entire scope of this countdown, let's pull all of these threads together. Let's return to our initial mission. Does this stack of sources prove that Gunsmoke is America's Homeric epic?
Well, after digging through these 10 stories,
I think the case is ironclad. This was not a show designed to sell cereal to children on a Saturday morning. It was deeply, uncomfortably adult. It tackled racism, mental illness, the hypocrisy of the social elite, and the psychological trauma of violence.
And we have to give immense credit to the medium itself. The visionary team of McDonnell and Meston understood that radio, ironically, was a far more intimate and effective medium for these massive themes than early television.
You had to use your imagination.
Exactly. When you listened to the radio, you were forced into a partnership with the creators. Your own imagination had to paint the dusty streets, feel the biting cold of the blizzard, and visualize the blood on the floor of the saloon. It engaged the audience's mind in a way that early, low-budget black and white television simply couldn't match.
The DNA of Gunsmoke is woven into almost everything that came after it. It paved the way for the morally complex television westerns of the late 50s and 60s, shows like Have Gun Will Travel and The Rifleman.
But it goes further than that.
You can draw a direct, unbroken line from Matt Dillon's moral agony right to Woodrow Call and Lonesome Dove. You see it in Seth Bullock trying to bring law to Deadwood, and you see it right now in John Dutton fighting the steamroller of progress in Yellowstone. It is the genesis of the American anti-hero.
It established, firmly and finally, that the frontier wasn't just a physical geography, it was a crucible for human morality.
So, final verdict time. If you, the listener, had never heard a single second of Gunsmoke Radio before, if you thought it was just a dusty museum piece, is this top 10 countdown the perfect introduction to the series?
Unequivocally, yes. It captures the entire breathtaking spectrum of the show's ambition. It gives you the blistering social commentary, the historical subversion, and the profound psychological depth.
I completely agree. If I had to single out just one episode for someone to start with tonight, I think I'd highlight number 4,
Yeah,
The Guitar.
great choice.
It's a smaller story, but the heartbreaking, poetic justice of the town banding together to protect Weed Pendle, a man who destroyed the things that destroyed his music, is just beautiful storytelling. It shows the grace hidden in the grit. What about you?
I have to highlight the pinnacle, number 1, Bloody Hands. For its completely unparalleled, fearless exploration of moral injury, it stands as one of the finest pieces of audio drama ever produced in any era. It transcends its genre.
It really does.
And looking at all this material, it leaves us with a final provocative thought to mull over.
Lay it on us.
Over 70 years have passed since William Conrad first spoke into that CBS microphone. And yet, Gunsmoke resonates today louder than ever. Why? It's not because the physical frontier still exists. The West was paved over a long time ago.
Right.
It resonates because the moral frontier has shifted, but it hasn't disappeared. Look at our modern world. Look at the digital landscape. We are constantly navigating anonymity, the sudden violence of online mobs, cancel culture, and the appeal of vigilante justice.
That's a great point.
Every time we log on, we are still asking the exact same fundamental question that Matt Dillon faced every single week in the dirt of Dodge City. What is the personal spiritual cost of maintaining a civilized society?
That is a massive question to carry with you today. But to you listening, thank you so much for sharing such a remarkable, eye-opening stack of sources with us. You've completely changed how I view a piece of American history. The X-ray machine might be broken when looking at human morality, but sometimes closing your eyes and listening to the static is the only way to hear the truth. Until next time.